My name is Rosie Delaney. I'm 12 years old, and I live in Riverside, California, with my mom and dad. Last month, something happened to me that changed everything about how I see life, faith, and eternity. I went to heaven and met Jesus, and he told me about three great sins that are keeping many Christians from entering heaven in September 2025. He said to me, Rosie, you must go back and tell everyone, especially the adults, because so many who believe they're ready for the rapture are not ready at all. At first, I couldn't understand why he would choose me. I'm just a little girl, shy and not very brave. But Jesus explained that sometimes he chooses children because their hearts are still tender. Children listen with purity, he said, but many grown-ups have learned to ignore my voice. Those words stayed in my heart. He made me realize that sometimes the smallest voices can carry the biggest messages. So, even though I'm only 12, I need to share what I saw and heard. Jesus said it was very, very important. And when he said that, I felt the weight of heaven on my shoulders. It all began on August 15th, 2025. It was a Saturday morning, the kind of morning when the sun came through the kitchen window and made everything look golden. Mom was making pancakes, and I could smell the sweetness in the air. Pancakes are my favorite, especially when she sprinkles chocolate chips and lets them melt into the fluffy layers. I remember thinking how happy I was just to sit at the table waiting for breakfast. But that happiness didn't last long. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my stomach. My head spun, and the room blurred. I pressed my hand against my tummy and told Mom, I don't feel good. She turned, saw the sweat on my forehead, and rushed to feel my skin. Her hand trembled when she whispered, Rosie, you're burning up. Dad came running, his face pale. Without wasting a second, he grabbed the car keys and scooped me into his arms. Hold on, sweetheart, he said, his voice shaking. We're taking you to the hospital. At the hospital, everything moved so fast. Doctors and nurses surrounded me, speaking in urgent voices I didn't fully understand. They placed me in a white bed with tubes and machines buzzing around me. The air smelled like medicine and plastic. My chest rose and fell heavily, and I could hear my mom crying as Dad held her hand, praying, God, please don't take her from us. I wanted to tell them, don't cry, I'll be okay, but my lips wouldn't move. My voice was gone. Then it happened. The noise of the machines faded. The voices of the doctors grew faint, like echoes in the distance. Darkness covered me, but it wasn't the scary kind of darkness. It was like a soft blanket wrapping me in peace. I felt weightless, as if I were floating in gentle water. My fear vanished. Instead, I felt calm, so calm that every worry melted away. And then, in a blink, I was no longer in the hospital. I was standing in a place beyond words. Heaven. The grass stretched wide beneath my feet, greener than any lawn I had ever seen. It wasn't just green, it shimmered alive, like every blade of grass had its own heartbeat. When I stepped on it, it felt like velvet pillows carrying me. All around me were flowers, glowing softly as though light lived inside them. Their colors weren't the colors of earth. They were deeper, brighter, purer. Some looked like fire, some like crystal, and some like colors I didn't even have names for. The air, oh, the air! It smelled of everything good. Cookies, baking, fresh rain falling, roses blooming, even Mom's perfume when she hugs me at night. Every breath filled me with joy. But the most extraordinary thing was the light. It wasn't harsh like the sun that burns your eyes. It was soft, warm, and alive. It felt like love itself was shining down, wrapping around me until I wanted to cry from happiness. In that moment, I knew I was safe. Nothing evil could touch me here. My heart whispered, this is heaven. Then I saw him. Walking toward me was a man, but not just any man. I knew instantly. It was Jesus. His presence made everything brighter. He didn't look exactly like the paintings I'd seen in Sunday school. He was more real, more powerful, more alive. His face was filled with gentleness, but his eyes were oceans of love mixed with deep sorrow. When his gaze met mine, I felt as though he knew everything about me, every secret, every fear, every thought, and yet he loved me completely. He bent down so that we were eye to eye, and he smiled. Rosie, he said. Hearing him speak, my name was like hearing the most beautiful song ever written. It was soft but powerful, like wind blowing through chimes. "Yes, Jesus," I whispered, my voice trembling. He reached out and touched my cheek with a hand so gentle, so kind, that I almost wept. "Little one," he said, "I have something important to show you. Many of my people think they are ready for me to bring them home, but their hearts are not clean. There are 3 sins that keep them from being prepared. You must go back and tell them." Even though I didn't understand it all, I nodded. My heart told me this was serious. He took my hand, and instantly we were high above the earth. Below us I saw mountains, rivers, cities, and oceans. But I also saw something more. I could see into people's hearts. Jesus pointed to a large church filled with people. They were singing, lifting their hands, clapping, and crying. From the outside, it looked so holy, so alive. But Jesus opened my eyes to their hearts. Some hearts glowed pure and white like snow. Others, though, were dark, heavy, and muddy. "These people praise me with their mouths," Jesus said sadly, "but their hearts are far from me. They do 3 things that stain their souls, and they don't even realize how dangerous it is." He showed me the first sin, and what shocked me most was how ordinary it looked. Inside the church, I saw 2 women leaning together. One whispered, "Did you hear what happened at Sarah's house?" Another man whispered to his friend, "Tom's marriage is falling apart. Pray for him." It looked like concern, but I felt the truth in my spirit. They weren't truly worried. They enjoyed passing secrets. They even used the excuse of prayer to cover gossip. "Rosie," Jesus said, pointing at them, "do you see how each word darkens their hearts? They think they are helping, but their words are poison. Gossip destroys love. It tears unity apart in my church." I watched as every whisper turned into black smoke. The smoke covered the light inside their hearts until the brightness disappeared. People who once glowed with love turned dim and gray. The sight broke my heart. Tears filled my eyes as I turned to Jesus. "Why do they do this if they love you?" Jesus sighed. "Because they have not learned that love is greater than words. They have forgotten that silence can protect, but gossip can kill. Unless they repent, their lips will keep them from entering my Father's house." His voice was gentle but filled with sorrow, and then he showed me the second sin. The second sin was even more surprising. Jesus showed me families in their homes after church. At first glance, everything looked perfect. They seemed like strong Christian families, with open Bibles resting neatly on the tables, little scripture verses framed on the walls, and portraits of Jesus hanging where everyone could see them. Their words sounded holy, and their homes looked like places of faith. But then Jesus pulled back the surface and let me see what was happening in their hearts. When someone in their family hurt their feelings or made them angry, forgiveness was never complete. It was spoken with the mouth, but not lived out in the heart. I saw a mother who still carried bitterness against her sister for something that had taken place years ago. She would smile and say the words, "I forgive you," but behind her smile was a wound that she had never truly released. In her private thoughts, she rehearsed the pain again and again. I saw a father who could not let go of the disappointment he felt toward his son. His boy had made poor choices, and even though the father tried to treat him kindly, inside he nursed his pain, secretly replaying the mistakes in his mind. Jesus' eyes were heavy with grief. "Watch their hearts, Rosie," he said gently. "Unforgiveness builds walls. Walls so high and so thick that my love cannot flow in freely. They cry out for my mercy, yet they withhold mercy from the ones closest to them. How can they receive the fullness of my forgiveness while refusing to give the same to their own families?" And I saw it. Around each heart, dark stone walls were forming, brick upon brick. The people themselves didn't realize the walls were there. They still prayed. They still lifted their hands, but the walls remained, shutting out the light. Jesus, though, could see them clearly. Then he showed me the third sin, the one that brought the deepest sorrow to his face. He led me to people who looked like model Christians. They went to church faithfully, never missing a Sunday. They read their Bibles, prayed long prayers, and could quote scripture easily. Outwardly, they looked so committed. But beneath the surface, something else had captured their hearts. They had made their comfortable lives more important than following Jesus completely. Their beautiful houses, their savings, their jobs, and their security meant more to them than obedience. These people say they trust me, Jesus explained, but their real trust is in their bank accounts. They say they love me, but what they truly love is comfort. They have turned my blessings into idols. They have forgotten that I am the one who gave them everything. As he spoke, I saw their hearts. They were covered in shiny layers of gold and silver. The appearance was dazzling, but underneath, the light of Christ was faint and almost gone. They thought they were rich, but Jesus showed me that in heaven's eyes they were poor. They had pushed him out of first place and filled the throne of their hearts with treasures that could never last. Rosie, Jesus said, looking at me with those eyes that held endless love yet unbearable sadness. These three sins, gossip, unforgiveness, and the worship of comfort, are keeping millions of my people from being ready for the rapture. Many of them believe they are ready, but their hearts are unclean. They call me Lord, but they do not live as though I am Lord. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. But Jesus, what about the ones who truly love you? Will they really miss the rapture because of these things? Jesus' expression grew even more serious. I could see tears forming, shining like liquid light in his eyes. Yes, little Rosie, many will be left behind. Not because they do not belong to me, but because they are not prepared. The rapture is not only for those who believe my name, it is for those whose hearts are pure and ready to meet me face to face. Then he showed me a vision that shook me to the core. I saw the very moment when Jesus would return in the clouds. The trumpet sounded, and all over the world Christians looked up. Some began to rise, their faces radiant with joy as they floated upward to meet the Lord. They shone like the morning sun, full of gladness. But then I saw others, so many others, who stayed on the ground. They stretched out their hands toward the sky, weeping, shouting, "Why not me, Lord? Didn't I pray? Didn't I read your word?" They were broken and confused, unable to understand why they were left behind. Jesus let me see their hearts, and it became clear. The black stains of gossip still clung to them. The heavy walls of unforgiveness locked them in. The bright idols of comfort had smothered their light. They had believed in him, yes, but their hearts were not ready. "This is why I am sending you back, Rosie," Jesus said, kneeling down to meet my eyes once again. His voice was firm but tender. "You must warn my people, believing in me is not enough. They must live out their faith. They must wash their hearts clean of these sins before September." "September?" I whispered, fear and wonder mixing inside me. "Why September, Jesus?" His answer was filled with urgency. "Because that is when I will return for my bride, the church that is prepared, spotless, holy, without wrinkle." His words burned inside me. Then he showed me churches across America. Many of them were busy preparing for the end times. I saw families filling their basements with food and bottled water, churches storing supplies, people building safe shelters. But Jesus' face grew heavy with sorrow. They are preparing their bodies but neglecting their souls. They have forgotten the most important preparation of all. His voice grew stronger, echoing like a trumpet itself. "Tell them, Rosie, no amount of stored food will save them if their hearts remain unclean. Tell them that I care far more about their spiritual condition than their physical preparations. A heart polluted with gossip, locked in bitterness, or chained to earthly comforts cannot enter my kingdom no matter how much scripture they recite." Then something happened that I did not expect. Jesus reached into his robe and drew out a glowing heart. It pulsed with light, pure and beautiful, whiter than snow, shining with love. "This," he said softly, holding it like a treasure, "is what every heart should look like. Clean, pure, overflowing with love for me and for others. When I return in September, only those with hearts like this will be ready to come with me." He placed the glowing heart into my hands. It was warm and alive, almost as if it had its own heartbeat. The moment I touched it, I understood things I had never known before. I felt his overwhelming love for every human being, even those who ignored him, even those who were not ready. I felt his sorrow for those who would miss the rapture, and yet I also felt his deep hope that they still had time to change. My eyes filled with tears as I looked back at him. He smiled gently, though sadness lingered. "Rosie," he said, "this message is not to terrify my people. Fear cannot keep them ready. Only love can. I am telling you this because I long for every heart to be prepared. And in that moment, I finally understood. He wasn't telling me this to scare people, but because he wanted everyone to be ready. He wanted every single person who loved him to come home with him in September. You must tell the grown-ups exactly what you saw, Jesus said. Tell them about the gossip that darkens hearts. Tell them about the unforgiveness that builds walls. Tell them about the idols of comfort that push me away. But also remind them that I love them deeply, and I want them to be ready. How can they prepare, Jesus? I asked, still clutching the glowing heart he had placed in my hands. They must examine their hearts honestly, he explained. When they speak about others, they must ask themselves, am I sharing this out of love, or am I simply spreading words to satisfy curiosity? When they are hurt, they must forgive, not halfway, not only with words, but with their whole being. And when they think of their lives, they must ask, do I treasure my comfort more than following me? As he spoke, Jesus showed me visions of people across the world who were cleaning their hearts. I saw a woman who used to gossip about her neighbors. Instead of whispering rumors, she began to pray for them with compassion. Slowly, her heart glowed brighter and brighter, until it was shining white like snow. I saw a man who had carried resentment against his brother for years. With tears in his eyes, he chose to forgive, and the thick, dark walls around his heart collapsed like paper. Light rushed back into him. I saw a family who decided to give away half their savings to feed the poor. As they gave joyfully, the glittering idols that had wrapped around their hearts disappeared. Their love for Jesus returned to its rightful place above all else. It was breathtaking to watch. Hearts became pure, radiant, and ready for the King. But I also saw others who heard the warning and shook their heads. They thought it did not apply to them. Some believed they were already good enough. Others laughed it off, saying these sins were too small to matter. This is why I chose you, Rosie, Jesus said with a smile that was both tender and strong. Adults often convince themselves that they know better, but children believe with simple faith. When you speak, some will listen because they will hear my truth through your pure heart. I looked around at the beauty of heaven. Every flower shimmered with light, every breeze carried peace, and every step felt like joy. My voice trembled. Jesus, can't I stay here with you? It's so wonderful here. I love you so much. His smile grew warmer, though his eyes carried purpose. I know, little one, and one day you will return here forever. But right now you are my messenger. There are people who will only listen when the words come from you. He gently took the glowing heart from my hands and pressed it into my chest. I gasped as warmth spread through me, filling every part of my being. Now heaven will always be inside you, he said. When you speak, people will feel not just your words, but my love and urgency flowing through you. Jesus rose to his feet and reached out his hand. Are you ready to return and help me save my people? I hesitated for a moment, afraid of what people might think. But then I nodded firmly. Yes, Jesus, I'm ready. I'll tell them everything you showed me about the 3 sins and about keeping their hearts clean for September. He embraced me, and it was the greatest hug I had ever felt, warm, safe, and overflowing with love. It wrapped around me like a blanket, assuring me that no matter what happened when I returned, he would never leave my side. Remember, Rosie, he whispered as the light around me grew brighter and brighter. Tell them that I love them too much to let them miss the rapture because of stained hearts. Tell them September is coming quickly, but there is still time. The most important preparation is not for their cupboards or their shelters, but for their hearts. The last thing I saw was Jesus' beautiful smile as I drifted away from that radiant place. Suddenly, I gasped and coughed. My eyes flew open, and I was back in the hospital bed. The machines beeped wildly, and my chest rose and fell with fresh breath. My mother was sobbing tears of joy, while my father stood frozen, then rushed to hold me. The doctors were astonished. They said my heart had stopped for 12 whole minutes, but now it was beating perfectly again. My mother hugged me so tightly I could hardly breathe, while my father wiped his face with trembling hands, but I knew I couldn't wait. Even though my throat was dry and weak, I clutched their hands and whispered, Mommy, Daddy, I went to heaven. Jesus showed me something very important. He said there are 3 sins keeping Christians from being ready for the rapture in September, and I must tell everyone. At first they looked uncertain, as though maybe I was just speaking from fever or medicine. But when I began describing every detail of what I had seen, Their expressions changed. They knew this was not imagination. This was real. I told them about gossip that darkens hearts, unforgiveness that builds walls, and love for comfort that replaces love for Christ. I told them about the rapture in September and how many people who think they are ready are not ready at all. Tears filled my father's eyes again, but this time they were tears of conviction. "Rosie," he said quietly, "some of the things you described, I think I've been guilty of them without realizing it." The next day, our pastor Dylan came to visit me in the hospital. He had known me since I was little, and he always spoke to me with kindness and respect. When I shared my vision with him, his face grew very serious. He asked many questions, making sure he understood every detail, and I answered with the words that Jesus had placed in my heart. At last, Dylan leaned back in his chair, his voice low but steady. "Rosie, I believe God truly spoke to you. Some of the things you've told me, there's no way a child could know them unless Jesus himself showed you. This message must be shared with the whole church." Fear welled up in me. "But Pastor Dylan, what if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm just a little girl making up stories?" He gave me a reassuring smile. "Rosie, Jesus chose you for this. That means he will also give you the strength. Adults sometimes resist what they hear, but when truth comes from the mouth of a child, it pierces their hearts in ways they don't expect." When Sunday came, I was still in the hospital. My body was weak, but my heart burned with the message. Pastor Dylan asked if I could speak to the congregation through a video call on the big screen. My mother and father helped me sit up in bed, arranging the blankets around me. My hands shook as they placed the tablet in front of me, but I remembered Jesus' words, "Now heaven will always be inside you." And suddenly I could see all the familiar faces from our church, looking at me through the camera. I took a deep breath and began telling them everything Jesus had shown me. My voice trembled at first, but as I kept speaking, a warm courage filled me. I told them about the 3 sins and how they stain hearts. I explained the rapture in September and how only those with clean hearts would be ready to go with Jesus. As the words left my mouth, I saw the expressions of the people in front of me begin to change. Some faces softened, tears sliding down their cheeks as they listened. Others looked shocked, covering their mouths with their hands. A few leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide and troubled. By the time I finished speaking, the entire congregation was wrapped in silence. For several long moments, nobody moved. It felt like the weight of heaven was pressing gently on every soul in that room. Then Mrs. Anna, my Sunday school teacher, slowly stood. She pressed a trembling hand against her chest. Her eyes were red with tears, and her voice broke as she spoke. "Rosie," she whispered, "I believe Jesus used you to speak directly to my heart. I've been guilty of gossiping about others and disguising it as prayer requests. I didn't realize how harmful my words had been, but now I see it clearly." A murmur spread across the room. Mr. David stood up next. His voice was heavy but sincere. "I've been holding unforgiveness against my brother for so many years. I thought I had buried it, but in truth I carried it with me every day. Tonight I realize I've built a wall in my own heart, and I need it to come down." Moments later, Mrs. Amanda stood as well. She looked down at her hands before speaking, as though ashamed. "I love Jesus," she said softly, "but I've also loved my comfortable life too much. My house, my security, my routines, I've placed them above obedience. I see now that I've made idols out of blessings, and I don't want to live like that anymore." One by one, more voices joined in. It was as though a floodgate had opened. People began confessing the very sins Jesus had revealed to me. Some wept as they admitted their struggles, others raised their hands pleading for forgiveness. Pastor Dylan walked to the front of the platform. His voice was firm but compassionate. "If you are ready to clean your hearts and prepare for the rapture, I invite you to come forward." Almost the entire church responded. Men, women, even teenagers moved down the aisles, filling the altar area. Many knelt, sobbing, pouring their hearts out in prayer. I saw husbands asking forgiveness from wives, friends embracing one another, children clinging to their parents. It was one of the most powerful sights I had ever witnessed. After that service, my hospital room became a place of constant visitors. People wanted to hear more about what Jesus had shown me. Some asked questions out of doubt. saying the rapture might not really be in September. But others listened with wide eyes and serious hearts, determined to prepare themselves. Mrs. Susan, our neighbor, came with tears in her eyes. She took my hand gently. "Rosie, I've been angry with my sister for over 10 years. She hurt me, and I told myself I'd never forgive her. But after hearing your testimony, I picked up the phone. I told her I was sorry for holding bitterness so long. She forgave me, and we both cried together. I feel like a heavy weight has fallen from my shoulders." Later, Mr. Henry, a colleague of my father, visited. His tone was quiet, but his words carried conviction. "I've spent nearly all my time chasing more money and nicer possessions. I worked late hours and neglected prayer, thinking success meant I was secure. But when I heard about the third sin, I realized I had built my life on the wrong foundation. I want to place Jesus first in everything from now on." The transformation in people's faces amazed me. Those who had seemed weary and burdened began to shine with peace. Those who once looked sharp or bitter now smiled with gentleness. It was like watching Jesus wash hearts from the inside out, just as he had shown me in heaven. Of course, not everyone accepted the message. Some dismissed me, saying I was just a child and couldn't understand such things. Others argued that nobody could know the day or hour, so what I said couldn't be true. A few even grew angry, insisting I was scaring people for no reason. That hurt me deeply. For a moment I questioned if I should keep speaking. But then I remembered Jesus' words that some people would listen and some would not. My responsibility was to share the message faithfully, not to convince every heart. So I pressed on even when it was difficult. Pastor Dylan later invited me to share at other churches. At first, I felt nervous and small, standing before crowds of adults. My hands shook, my voice wavered, but each time I began to speak, the glowing heart inside me warmed, filling me with strength and giving me the words. Some churches welcomed the message with open arms. People prayed, repented, and committed to living with clean hearts. Other churches, however, refused to let me speak. They said children shouldn't correct or instruct adults. That confused me, because Jesus had told me very clearly that sometimes adults needed to hear the truth through the simple faith of a child. At one church, as I shared, a man suddenly stood and shouted angrily, "This little girl is deceived. The rapture isn't coming in September. She's spreading false prophecy." Fear rushed over me, and tears filled my eyes. For a moment I thought about stopping, but then I remembered Jesus' embrace, his smile, and his words of love. I took a shaky breath and looked at the man. "Sir," I said softly, "I understand that you don't believe me, and that's all right. But Jesus really did show me these things. I'm only trying to help people be ready. Even if you don't think the rapture is in September, wouldn't it still be good to make sure your heart is clean before God?" The entire church grew still. My words trembled, but they carried a weight that wasn't my own. Some people began to cry, and later, several came up to me. They apologized for the man's harshness and said they could feel Jesus speaking through me. That gave me courage. I realized then more than ever that this wasn't about me. It was about Jesus' message. I may be only 8 years old, but Jesus chose me to tell you these things. Gossip, unforgiveness, and loving comfort more than God are keeping so many people from being ready for the rapture in September. But there is still time. Ask Jesus to search your heart. If you find these sins, give them to him. He loves you so much that he even sent a child to warn you. September is coming quickly, and he wants no one left behind. We are deeply grateful that you stayed with us until the very end of this testimony. If you're still here, it means the Lord has touched something in your heart. We encourage you to take a simple action that can carry eternal impact. Write a comment and let us know where you're watching from so we can lift your nation in prayer. Make sure you're subscribed to this channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell so you won't miss the messages of hope and revelation we share every single day.